Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Gold Hoops and God podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Guerra. Thank you for joining us today. I have a fantastic guest here, a good friend of mine, Dr. Alicia Reyes Barriéntez. Hi, Dr. Alicia.
Hi, I'm
Uh,
happy to be here.
Yay, I'm so happy to have you. Dr. Alicia is currently in San Antonio, Texas, and she is a professor. And I'm really excited for her to be here today to talk with us about her experiences, her understanding of culture, and navigating faith. So, hi, Dr. Alicia.
Hi.
Yay. So, let's get started. Dr. Alicia and I actually met in Texas. I lived there very briefly for a hot minute in Dallas. There's stories to that, but I would invite Dr. Alicia to talk about, growing up in Texas and kind of just navigating Latina identity.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Guerra. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yay.
Um, and so I grew up on the Texas-Mexico borderlands,
Mm.
colonias on both sides. But most of my childhood was spent in Laredo, Texas,
Mhm.
so on the U.S. side of the border. And I, but before we moved to Laredo, from first to fifth grade, we were in this little town,
Mm.
predominantly white,
Mm.
outside of Bryan College Station.
Oh, interesting.
And so that was really formative because of the racial dynamics and
Mm.
the way that race played a role in how we were taught and how we were perceived as children of color.
Mm.
So it was actually a really good thing when I went to Laredo because it helped me for the first time I saw Mexican Americans in positions of power, right?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so I didn't have that representation prior to the move to Laredo. And then there were so many opportunities for me in Laredo. It's a very culturally rich place.
Mhm.
And so, for example, in high school, I was the vocalist for my mariachi
Oh,
in, yeah.
cool. I love it.
So that was amazing. Um, but growing up in the borderlands is a very unique
Mhm.
experience.
Mhm.
It can also be difficult, or
Mhm.
maybe complex is a better word. It's complex because you're exposed to the politics of two nations at the same time.
Wow.
Um, you are also frequently um, witnessing the way that Border Patrol treat people. Um,
You saw
but
it live and in person, I'm sure,
right,
all the
right,
time.
absolutely. And that's difficult because, like, I remember as a child,
Yeah, it's traumatizing.
we I think this was maybe seventh grade where we were on the bus, and one of the games we would play was La Migra. So when somebody said La Migra, we would all hide. And
That
yeah,
was a game you'd play as children. Oh
we
my
would play, and
god.
that's just
That's
it's
deep.
telling.
That's deep. The fact that I mean, children are so aware. They're watching. They see what's happening. Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
And I always perceive La Migra as, they're not on our side. They're
Right.
not here
It's
for
scary.
us.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Wow.
it's difficult as a child to see these Border Patrol vans that are caged, in the back, and to see that there's people in there, and I was actually exposed to the Border Patrol even before I moved to the Borderlands, because in Caldwell there used to be this hanger factory.
Mm.
Caldwell is where I was um, from first to fifth grade. That's where we were living, and
Mhm.
there used to be this hanger factory outside of right next to our house on the same block, and or on an
Mhm.
adjacent block. And the Border Patrol, well, technically it was INS at the time, because ICE didn't
I see.
become what it is until after 9/11 and George Bush's
Mhm.
policies and all that.
People
And the
don't know
establishment,
that. People don't know that history and
right,
the creation of ICE, right?
right.
Right.
Um, which to further that point, ICE was created in light of the Twin Tower attacks,
Mm-hmm.
um, because the Department of Homeland Security, George W. Bush created the Department of Homeland Security in order to address terrorism, but it
Mm-hmm.
really became this surveillance, continued
Cool.
surveillance
Mm-hmm.
of the borderlands.
Right.
Um, and
It,
so,
it's a girl. I always ask them like, who's terrorizing who? Like, it's no. It's like,
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, um, every once in a while, INS would come and they would raid this hanger factory.
Wow.
And there were people at my church that would go to that would work there, and they would tell us what was happening. And so there'd be people who were hiding in big boxes for like 24 hours, 48 hours.
I know. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and then some people managed to get away in cars, and I remember seeing this. And whenever the raids would happen, our phone would start ringing because we live so close, and so the
Why?
community wanted to know. And so whatever I saw, I would tell my mom, like, this person went out. Um,
Whoa.
yeah. And so, like, one, for example, one time there was this woman who I knew as the Jehovah's Witness lady.
Mm,
She managed to get away in a car. And so I told my mom, and then her family was like, okay, we're good now, you know.
okay.
But these are the things that these are experiences that Mexican American children have,
Mm-hmm.
um, that we're exposed to, and that we as fully as we can, we understand it. And because
Mm-hmm.
we're the targets of this kind of violence,
Mm-hmm.
many times, we I could understand what was going on, right, as a Mexican and as a citizen of the United States.
Yeah.
And it was just very difficult because how do you explain to
Mm-hmm.
a 6, 7, 8-year-old child that the country targets Mexicans?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why is it that it's our people that are always being deported?
Gotcha. Yeah.
When and as a Mexican American, that this land used to be Mexico. So
Mm-hmm.
you grow up with a different understanding of the
Yeah.
historical context, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Totally. Totally. Like well, one thing I wanted to ask, how old were you when that was happening? You're pretty
I was
young, right? You were
anywhere
little.
from maybe 7 to 10 years old.
You're little. You were little to like remember all of that. I'm sure it made an impact because that's traumatizing, for a child to see those things, to see like, border patrol. And what's interesting? There's a book called Drawing Deportation. It's by Sylvia Rodriguez Vega. She's a colleague and friend of mine, and she focuses on children and the impact that these practices have on young children. And it was something that I think it's reminding me of this, that for children, they don't really differentiate between the local city police or ICE or TSA or what, right? It's like if they have a badge, if they have a gun and they're in uniform, it's scary for kids, right? Like it becomes like a scary thing for young children, I think. And I don't know that people realize that how traumatizing it is for kids to go through these things. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And it really, I mean, it begins to shape your worldview from a very young age because this is what you're exposed
Imagine.
to.
Yeah.
And we would travel back and forth from Caldwell to Nuevo Laredo.
Mm,
And so we always had to go through the different checkpoints,
yeah.
and we were exposed to the Border Patrol. I was always scared of Border Patrol. I pretty much still am. I know how to compose myself now because I'm an adult and I know how to, like, respond to questions. But as a child, you're just kind of at you're just being protected by your parents. And my parents
Mhm.
were uneducated, right? And so they protected me in the best way that they could,
Okay. Mhm.
but their experience in the US was very different from mine because they were here as immigrants who had been born in Mexico.
Mm,
I was born here
mhm,
and I knew English, right? So I understood sort of the gringo way of life
mm,
way better than they did because they couldn't capture all of it because of the barrier
mm.
of not understanding English fully.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was understanding these, I was coming into being as, este, I was growing up, literally coming of age, and soaking up this environment around me that was violent, um, at all, at all intersections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was young. I was a young child. I was Mexican American. I was the
Mm-hmm.
daughter of immigrants who were working class. And we were
Mm-hmm.
pretty isolated where we lived, because Caldwell is a predominantly white town that is not
Oh,
culturally
interesting.
rich in Mexican and
Mm,
Mexican American
yeah.
traditions and all of that. So even though we got that experience from my parents from first to fifth grade, I felt very alone. And
Mm,
this, I remember thinking, why was I born Mexican and Baptist?
mm.
Like, why couldn't I either, like, God could have made me white and Baptist or Mexican and Catholic, right? So then on top of like all of these other intersections, like,
Wow.
and then not only that, I would ask God, well, why did you have to make me the daughter of the pastor, right? Like, it's not like,
Ooh,
yeah. So it was very,
intense.
I didn't like it. It
Yeah.
was too much like
Too much to
spiritual
navigate, it sounds like.
responsibility.
Yeah. I can imagine just that feeling of like not the feeling like, where do I belong? I would imagine, right? Like, because if the environment is all predominantly white and you're a Mexican American and then religious, we'll get into the religion right now because it's true. Like, this has come up when people of color, for whatever reason, they end up attending predominantly white churches, or they're part of a denomination that is predominantly white. It has an impact for sure. The theology, right? The theology that comes out is very interesting. Yeah, yeah. So I would love for you to share a little bit as far as, like, as you were mentioning, kind of that relationship with Christianity. Yeah.
Yes, so it's really interesting because I grew up Southern Baptist, right, which is
Wow.
it's very
Stick to
conservative,
the brand. Yep. Yep.
um,
Yep. Mhm.
very problematic, anti-woman, um, lots more
Conservative, right?
political,
It's like tends to
yeah,
be very
extremely
conservative.
conservative.
Yeah.
And I remember that everything that I ever heard about Catholicism was bad. Like, we were
We're
anti-Catholic.
we're not Christian. Catholics are not Christian. Yeah.
Christians, and
That's
our
funny.
goal was to convert the Catholics.
I love it. Rebaptize them.
Yes, our goal was to convert the Catholics because
Oh man,
the
that's wild.
Catholics were also didn't take religion seriously.
Yeah, bunch of
It
seats.
so
That's crazy.
they didn't have a direct connection with God. So it was our role
Hey.
to convert
Mhm,
them, right?
mhm.
And I'm so anti proselytizing.
Fascinating.
So this
So
was
interesting.
I never liked I never liked going out and like giving people the tracts and trying to convert them because we would pass out these tracts that would
Fires and stuff.
that would show
Or like
pictures of that would show pictures of hell, like what happens if you
fire and
believe.
brimstone. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, like,
Yeah,
that's how I was raised. And so
really. That's
yeah,
very like that's very sinner. Okay, ¿cómo se llama? I think it's Jonathan Edwards. Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
yes.
We're like dangling over the fire. It's like, dang, that's intense. That's
And
intense.
it's a spiritual abuse, right? Because as children, we don't have the capacity to, like, our minds are developing.
Trust.
So when you're teaching a spirituality, we're going to believe everything
And
that
you
you
trust.
say. Yeah.
And
And
you would trust. Of course, like, why wouldn't you trust your parent, teacher, pastor, whoever, right? Like, as a kid, you're like, oh, I'm sure they're telling me the truth, right? Yeah. Very
yeah.
interesting.
And I mean, just teaching children about hell, it's not, I don't recommend it.
Right.
Children don't have, the capacity that we have to think things through in a
Mhm.
way that protects ourselves, right? So now I know, wait a minute, maybe hell is just a social construction. And I'm
Mm,
able to understand that and give myself options in
right.
terms of what I want to believe. But children, you like, they're literally indoctrinating children, right?
Mm,
And and I never felt comfortable with trying to impose my faith on somebody else. It
Yeah.
didn't, and it
Yeah.
didn't feel genuine to
Very
me.
uncomfortable. Hmm.
It didn't feel
Hmm.
genuine. Like it didn't feel like like as we were doing this, it was caring for the community. It wasn't. It was like gotcha.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
we're the
I've
ones that,
always, yeah, like, at least I've always, so theologically, right? I've tried to like unpack that. I'm like, why are people so worried about my soul? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you invested and why are you so concerned and pressed about what I'm doing? Focus on what you're doing. You know what
right,
I mean? Like,
right.
it's very bizarre to me. I don't know. I've never really understood that. I'm like, at most, be a good person. Maybe that will inspire other people. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Treat people well, be kind. That's awesome, you know? But this idea of like, I have to go out and convert people, I don't know. It's very uncomfortable. Yeah.
Absolutely. Imagine having to do it. We didn't have a choice too. We had to do what my dad was very authoritative, and he
Mm.
was
So would you go
just
out into the community and like talk to people? Like,
yeah,
you
no,
know,
we would just be like
door to
straight up,
door or
"Hey, I'm here to talk about Jesus. Only Jesus can save you," and from hell, basically.
mm.
And then inviting them to the church.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
we weren't that successful, to be honest. To top it off, like our churches
Oh my
were
god.
never very big. My father, there's a lot of issues and problems
Mm,
he was going through. He had anger issues
mm,
and wasn't very good about dealing as a pastor about dealing
mhm.
with the congregation, and
Right.
he just wasn't, he didn't have that the people skills,
People
or
skills, yeah.
the love and the in
Mm,
my opinion, the love and the passion for our community
mhm,
to
mhm, mhm.
present, I guess, his beliefs in a way that was healthy and not imposing on anyone. Um, but
Mhm,
yeah, we were completely like La Virgencita was, that was a sin because she was not God.
mm,
Jesus was God,
mm.
and we believe that the Catholics worship the saints, and so this was, I think
Polytheism.
my, I want to be very clear about what it is that we're taught. Like this is so, and I think it's
Yeah.
important for you to understand how anti-Catholic my upbringing was, because then loop around, I'm 41 now, and I'm
Mhm.
trying to experience the divine feminine, and that's only possible
Mm.
through figures like La Virgencita, right? Which
Mm.
is why
Wow.
maybe 7 years back I began to think about the possibility of believing in this divine feminine.
Wow.
And it was, it took me a really long time to undo all of the damage and all of the
Untangle.
anti-ness
Mhm,
that
mhm,
I
mhm.
had against that I had been taught,
Yeah, against
and it was
Catholicism.
very sad because also like my dad didn't want us to go to like baptisms or
Those are so
quinceañeras.
cult
If
those are
there
so
was, if there was
cultural.
gonna be drinking, and I mean, all of our events, there's drinking. Like drinking is
Mostly, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, like celebratory, the carne asada, the,
right.
baptism, the wedding, like, it's like hang out, we have the, the mass, esto, and then we spend time with family and friends, usually having food and having, some drinks. That's very much part of our in general. That's kind of like a part of who we live.
Absolutely. And my mom's side of the family was entirely Catholic.
Oh,
They still are.
interesting.
And so
Oh,
we
I
they
didn't
were
know
always
that.
like, yeah, and so it was
Did you
really
not spend time
awkward.
with them? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, did you not really spend time with them because they were,
Well,
like, doing
so
all that
let
stuff,
me
or not really?
so my I was raised in a domestically violent home, Lauren, and you know this. And so one of the ways that an abuser tries to um, assert control over a woman or the kids, the household in general, is by alienating them from their
Oh my
family.
God. Yeah.
So he brought us from Nuevo Laredo to we were isolated in Caldwell, so my mom didn't have the protection of her family.
I see, I see, I see. Oh, Alicia,
And so
thank you for
we
sharing.
were I felt very much like I've always loved my mom's side of the family has been my family. Like
Mhm.
um
Yeah, super close.
it yeah, I've always just been very close. They have given me love. They have nurtured me with love since I was a
Mhm,
child.
mhm, mhm,
And it was hard not to be able to share in the experience of Catholicism because Catholicism plays such an important role
mhm.
in the lives of Mexicans. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like the number one, your faith, and then La Virgencita. Like,
it
how
is.
dare you say
Yeah, we just
anything?
celebrated. Yeah, like recently. If you're watching, like, we're filming in mid-December, and yeah, we just celebrated. La Virgen de Guadalupe. I mean, it's true. Like thousands of people come out to celebrate her, and I think I'll kind of like say this real quick. Even people who are not religious and people who don't go to church all the time, they still feel a draw, right? They feel a connection, a respect for La Virgen slash Donancin, right? Because of the indigenous connection too, right? She's all these things, embody the divine feminine, right? Um, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Alicia. The Catholic, right? That cultural Catholicism that's
Right.
so
And
important.
as a child, I was like, can I be fully Mexican without being Catholic?
Mm.
And then the other question was,
I don't know.
can I be saved without being white?
Ooh.
Right?
Mhm.
Because the only form of Christianity that I was exposed to was this very white,
White
Jesus
savior.
centered,
Yeah.
white savior um, ideology that is incredibly harmful.
Mhm.
Um, so I tell people that I was just very scared of God because in my mind he was this like white Thor ready to strike lightning against me at the first indication that
A
I'd sin.
Zeus, like a Zeus figure in the sky, ready to like burn it all
Yeah,
down. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I began experiencing depression as a young child
Mm.
because I did not feel um saved. Like
Mhm.
I was like, well, how do I know 100%? And if I'm not 100% sure, then that means I'm going to hell. And so that's reason enough to depress a child.
Mhm.
Um and in speaking with some of my girl cousins, it's really interesting that they feel the same way. We were raised
Really?
similarly, and
Mm.
yeah, I mean, and
Were they raised Baptist or were they raised Catholic? Which side of the
well,
family?
my dad's side of the family was raised Baptist,
Baptist. Okay. Mhm.
but my dad was the first person in his family to convert, and I
I see.
say that you know in quotations. But
Yeah.
um, so prior to that, our family had been Catholic, and so it was also kind of like this, like really, like why do we have to be the first?
Why are we doing this? Yeah.
Why can't we just be Catholic? Like it's so much easier. They're so much more fun. They can cuss. They can drink, and
Right.
they don't
Right.
have to go to church every Sunday. That's boring. I just liked the Catholic lifestyle was way more appealing
Way more
in my
attractive. Totally.
mind
Yeah.
than
Yeah. Yeah. You
this
know.
harsh reality that I was living.
Let me just say, I feel like every other episode, I'm like, shout out to the Jesuit universities, Jesuit priests. We would have fun, like the priests were super fun. Like they were like super chill with us. Like, the nuns that worked at the universities were also really open-minded, which is exactly what we needed as college students. Is like, who wants to go to campus ministry if they're gonna be all like condemning and judgmental? No one would, right? But because they were open and really like chill, we're like, oh yeah, cool. Like, let's go to the retreat. Yeah, that's cool. Like prayer groups. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. Wow. So fascinating, friend.
Yes.
Mm.
And I mean my dad, his life goal was to convert as many Catholics as possible. And
Really?
so he was the
Oh, interesting.
epitome of anti-Catholicism. I mean, he just preached and
Wow.
preached and preached that.
Well,
And
but he grew up Catholic.
He grew up Catholic, yes, but here's the
You
thing,
know what, like, what
right?
changed?
So,
I'm
and
sorry,
here's
I don't mean to get too, nosy into
yeah.
it, but
So, but you have to also take into consideration again, right? What's happening at the time when my dad's growing up and my mom's growing up.
mhm.
They were Both of my parents have told me that they never felt connected to God through the Catholic Church because all of the masses were in Latin when they were growing up.
Oh, yes, until Vatican II, exactly, when it was in the vernacular
Yeah.
and, like,
And
whatever the
so,
local language was. Yeah, and that wasn't until Vatican II was 62 to 65, I wanna say. So it was after that that changed. Okay, that makes sense. The
and
connection of,
so
like,
when,
that makes
like, my mom, she says when the first time she heard someone say, God loves you, that blew her mind because that
mm,
wasn't the language that was being used in
mm.
nurturing the her Catholic spirituality as a child.
Wow.
So it offered something
Wow.
different,
Huh.
right? Um, and an appealing way to get out of whatever mischief you were in,
Mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm.
And to and it allowed you to stand out, right? I'm not
Mm.
Catholic. I
I
am
see, I see, I see. Mhm,
an evangelical,
mhm,
and there was a lot of anti, at the time there was a lot of Catholic people who made fun of us, and so,
mhm,
but there was also that element, and so we had lots of songs about, it doesn't matter that they call us evangelicos, los amenes, los aleluyas, like, all that
mm.
stuff wasn't very nice either, and so it was just
It's a lot.
complicated. It
Yeah,
was
it's a
it was a lot, and
mhm.
I mean, I was little. Come on, I didn't have the critical thinking skills that I have now. I didn't have the social consciousness and understanding that I have now, and so I was a target.
Yeah.
Sure,
That's a lot to navigate. That's a lot to try to process and try to make sense of as a young kid. It's yeah, it's a lot. Hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah. And it's and it's so true when you're little, I think that's like the number one thing that we want is to feel safe, to
Hmm.
feel included, right? It's like the thing about like, oh, no one let me like eat lunch with them because we don't want to we don't want to feel different. We don't want to feel excluded. We don't want to feel like other or weird or whatever, right? And so I think it's true, especially as a child, like wanting to be in an environment where you're like, yeah, we're all Latino, yeah, we're all Catholic. I mean, I get that. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, but my mom's family, they were very good to us, and they never made us feel left out.
That's good.
Um, and our grandparents loved us. They didn't quite understand what it meant to be an evangelical, and they
Mm,
didn't want that version of faith for themselves, which good
mm,
for them.
mhm,
And so, and I think the situation's different now. Like, there are so many more Latino Protestants,
mhm,
Latino evangelicals,
mhm,
than there were when I was growing up.
mhm,
And when I was growing up, we were really outcasts. Um,
mhm, mhm.
and that it's different now. It's very
It's
different now.
grown a lot. I know, like in Guatemala and Central America, it's like ugh, huge, huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge. The evangelical churches are growing exponentially compared to they're growing exponentially, and the Catholic churches are kind of dwindling.
Yeah.
Um, so that's very interesting. Hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I don't think that people realize, maybe from the outside looking in, these little nuances make a difference. In other words, like in a family, right? If someone's like, "Oh, I am Presbyterian" versus "I'm Catholic" versus "I'm evangelical" or Methodist, like it matters. Like those little nuances matter in a family. It can cause a rift in a family, right?
Mhm.
If somebody is like, "Oh, I'm going to marry this Methodist guy," oh no, like what, right? For example, it becomes a big deal, and so yeah, even with more distinction, like for example, somebody to converting to Islam or embracing Judaism, whatever, right? Like in religion makes a difference. It does. It makes a big difference in people's family lives, with their friendships and stuff like that. So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate you
And
sharing.
like,
Yeah.
even like you mentioned, like, we were Baptist, and the Baptists were better than the Presbyterians, the Methodists, and certainly the Pentecostals.
For
you know.
sure. What?
I mean, there was levels, you know,
Totally.
and I was taught we were, you know, and I'm sure the Presbyterians and Methodists and Pentecostals and Lutherans and
Had
Episcopalians
their own version.
felt
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
felt that they were the best, but I
Yeah.
definitely developed this superiority complex. Like, well,
Mm,
we have it right, and this world of black and white didn't make sense to me because we don't live in a black and white world, right?
amen.
We
Amen
live
to that.
um in a world where
Mm,
um rainbows are not black and gray and white.
well,
Rainbows are colorful, and so um that, you know, that was also an interesting part of my upbringing, kind of like
mhm.
this, like, we know the truth, you know, and we know, even
Yes.
though Christianity has the different Christian denominations are so similar to each other, especially when you compare it to other world religions, that, like,
Yeah.
I don't understand why they're
It's
so
ironic. Yeah. It's so, I mean, it's ironic. Whenever I'm talking about religion, especially with Christianity, like in, with my students and stuff, I'm like, do y'all remember 31 flavors ice cream? They're all ice cream. They're a little different. You've got the chocolate chip, you've got the sherbet, you've got the coconut, pineapple, but they're all ice cream. Like they're
they
all ice cream at the
sure
end of the
are.
day. Yeah, it's very interesting how, yeah, people get real upset. They get very defensive, very upset. Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
So interesting.
um yeah, I'm just thinking about all of that. And so, you know, obviously when you're raised in a situation in which there's spiritual abuse, that's going to do something to you. And
Yeah.
so I know we were talking about this before we started the podcast, but about my deconstruction journey and just trying to make
Yeah.
sense of my faith. I'm in the middle of it. I'm right in the middle of the storm, I feel.
Hmm.
So it's been rough. It's been confusing, but at the same time, like, I have this peace because I'm no longer tied to the black and whiteness of the experiences that I grew up in. You know, I know that there's far more possibility, and I know that my imagination is a powerful
Mm-hmm.
part of my humanity. And so, um, while I don't consider myself Catholic. I don't participate in most of the rituals, but there are aspects of Catholicism that I identify with.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
beautiful.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
difficult not to if you're Mexican, because
Yeah.
Catholicism is, and it's not just Catholicism, right? It's the Mexican rebranding of Catholicism,
Tradition. Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
That is very appealing, and it has ultimately even resulted in, um, it's been one of the tools um, that political elites have used to unify
Mm-hmm.
the nation state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because Mexico and the church politically have been,
Aligned. Right.
and the
They
government
work
have
in conjunction.
been, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, they work in conjunction. And uh that's not a new like plan. Does that make sense? I mean, like that was the name of Spain's game forever. The church and the crown. That
right.
was how they rolled. Right? That's how it goes. So it is interesting to see that alliance. It's not uncommon, right? That alliance between the
Yeah,
nation state and religion, whatever the religion may be. Oh, and it's super fascinating. Mexico has now the first woman president, so I'm really interested to see. What I'm saying, she just got elected pretty recently, so I'm interested to see how
okay.
her trajectory goes. I'm hoping. When I saw that, I'm like, please, Lord, like I'm hoping for the best.
Claudia
Okay.
Sheinbaum, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like,
Sheinbaum.
although I mean, you know this. Like my family is Guatemalan Ecuadorian. However, growing up, we used to go to Tijuana all the time. I mean, once or twice a month we'd go, and it was beautiful. And then in school, like I'm grateful to have spent time like in Cuernavaca, in the F, some good amount of time in Mexico, and I love it, and it's beautiful, and it does feel like a connection. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like I swear it's like cousins. I'm like, yeah, Mexico. It's very cool. I love it. Um, but yes, the culture and religion connection, definitely. Yeah, and I think it's good. You know what I mean? I think that is actually the beauty of faith. I won't even use the word religion because I think faith is more malleable and more like what is the right word to use? There's a lot more flexibility, I think, in the word faith or spirituality and things like that. And it's true. Like I believe like everyone's on their own journey, right? On their own road and making sense of things and being like, okay, like in light of the things that I've learned, in light of the things that I've gone through, what do I believe, right? What do I believe to be true in this world? Yeah, and you know, like I was at mass speaking of Catholic, I was at mass yesterday and felt very comfortable and at peace and at home there. Um, and I was also watching a tarot reading this morning, you know, and I dare I dare someone to tell me that I'm not allowed to do that,
Right.
right? Like, no, like, and anyway, but it's that's the thing is like no one can control or dictate what you feel or what you believe, you know, using the word like spirit, source, be it Guadalupe, be it Tonancin, you know, the Orishas, whatever, you know, however people connect, they connect, you know. And so I'm excited for you, friend. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome to be, you know, figuring things out. It's very cool.
Yes. Um, it's a process, and it was
Yeah. Yeah.
difficult at the very beginning because when you've grown up with this kind of like either you believe this or you go to hell, it like
That's
sticks,
brutal.
you know, and it sticks with you, and
All or
it's
nothing.
difficult
Mhm.
to get out of that frame set. But once you're outside of that, there's so much
Mhm.
more freedom,
Mhm.
that there's no way that you can go back to that exact same version of spirituality or faith because
Mhm.
it's no longer freeing, or
Yes.
it never was freeing for me, right?
Ooh.
It was never liberating for me. It was always about the things that I could do and the things that I couldn't do,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I love that, and I think for me that is the point. Like, you know, I'll use the word God, right? I do believe God is God of life. I believe that God's desire for us is to be, you know, enjoying our lives, to have liberation, to have freedom, to experience love in all its forms, right? Friendship, romantic, etc. Yeah, you know, I think that's what it is about, you know, is freedom and liberation, all these beautiful things, that God is a God of life. Um, it totally reminds me of Gustavo Gutierrez, like theology of liberation, you know, the spirit of life, and it connects, you know. It's it's beautiful, right? It's beautiful to be able to embrace that versus feeling scared. You know what I mean? Versus feeling like God is going to smite me and, you know, burn down my family because, oh my God, damn, you know, it's like, it's rough. It's very scary. It's really, really scary. I think I mentioned on a different episode that when I tried to sign up for confirmation, there was like a parent volunteer that told me that my family was going to hell because we didn't have a Bible. I've told this story before, but so, you know, little things like that, like I get it, you know, like I do. I've had those. I also have had like those like encounters, right? Those like weird moments where I'm like, I don't think so. Like, yeah.
Not only that, but I was being groomed to be a Christian wife.
Mm. Say more.
I've been thinking so lately. I think in the past few weeks I've had this stark memory, and I've been so angry about it because one time we were at this hermana's house.
Mm.
Hermana is what we called the other members of
Christians.
our, right, because we were sisters and brothers in Christ. And so we were there and we were eating a meal, and for some reason the husband thought it appropriate to like speak to me. Like I was
Oh,
about 13. And so we had this
you're a
conversation.
minor, and he's this older man.
He's a older man.
Oh.
Why he needed to have any sort of conversation with me,
No.
I don't know. But I remember him telling me specifically that his wife, he said, you know, my wife has told me that she didn't feel whole until she became a wife and mother. And he told me that. And I was like, and I've been thinking about why.
Why is he trying to tell you this? Oh my God. No. Very weird.
It's a form of grooming, though, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's to push you, of course. It's to like, it's all, it's to push you in that direction. It's to like tell, it's, and it's not even subtle. It's like very blatantly saying,
absolutely.
like, you will never feel like a whole person or a good person until you check off the box of marriage and children, right? And many of it, right? That's a thing. That's definitely a thing. I don't think, and we've talked about this in person or privately. I really wonder how many women actually, I'm gonna say it, actually pause and consider for themselves whether or not they want to be a mother, or is it societal conditioning and cultural conditioning? Dare I say? You know what I mean? Dare I say it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because many of us were not even given options. And since our imagination was stunted,
Mm.
right? We didn't have the capacity to imagine beyond that. At first, to a certain extent. But I also remember this other hermana saying, well, because I was telling her I wanted to go to college. She's, pero, ¿para qué vas a, o sea, para qué vas
Why?
a,
Why would you want to learn?
she goes, yo estoy muy orgullosa de mis hijas porque ellas no estudiaron, ellas nomás trabajan cuidando a niños. Y yo sé que el día que se casen, ellas van a poder, trabajar en casa, cuidar a sus niños como debe ser. No necesitas educación para eso.
Wow.
Now, fortunately, my parents were very much pro college.
Thank God. You know what I mean? Thank God. Thank God. Thank God your parents at least, right, knew better than to push you and force you into, let's marry her off, like, and not let her go to school. Oh my God. No. That's crazy. That's wild.
Would have been horrible.
Oh, they would look at me and be like, oh, disaster. Like, she's still not married. She's got a PhD. Oh my God. What a mess.
Right.
That's really funny.
So, and
That's really, oh my God.
yeah, and I bought into that. I did. It took me a long time to be like, wait a minute. First of all, let me make sure I don't marry a pastor or a missionary because I ain't gonna end up in this bullshit
Oh
again,
my gosh.
So, um, but yeah, this is how I was raised, Lauren. I know it's very different from your experience, growing up Catholic. And I'm hoping yours was a lot healthier, a healthier spirituality.
Yeah, like there were parts of it that were great. And okay, two things. One thing that I'm grateful for is that my parents were never forcing. They
Yes,
were never forcing. They would
that's a gift.
never drag me out of bed to go to mass and we got to go to 8 a.m. mass. They never did that to me. My mom is a very faithful person. Like, that woman's got, she is close with God. Like, she's very prayerful. But she never forced me. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I'm grateful to have gone to schools that were really rather open-minded and really rather liberal when it came to like faith. They were Catholic schools, and yet they encouraged us to question. Like, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to question. It's okay to ask. It's okay to wonder why, and work it out, right? So I think that's, I kind of think that's why I've survived, if that makes sense, right? Like, I think that's kind of why, like, I actually remain and identify myself as like a practicing Catholic. Because if it had gone different, I'd be like, peace out, I'm done, it's over. Like, we're not doing that anymore. And I understand, why people, right? Of course, I understand why people leave. I understand why people leave Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church still does not ordain women, to this day. The treatment of like LGBTQ people is still terrible. There's still a lot of homophobia, still a lot of transphobia, right? I get it. You know what I mean? Like I understand why people leave Christianity altogether. Um and it's interesting. I feel like everyone has their mission. Part of me feels, and I've talked to other Catholic feminists about this. It's like part of our mission we feel like is, oh no, we gonna stay. We gonna stay and we're gonna be loud. And we're not gonna get pushed out, right? We're not gonna get pushed out. It's like we're gonna sit right here and call out all the BS that's happening. So I think that's kind of all. Yeah, I mean, I for sure feel like that's been part of my mission. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's great that you were offered more freedom and flexibility to make the faith something that was going to work for you and not something that was going to oppress you, right?
yeah, yeah. But friend, like I'm very proud of you. Like I'm very proud of you because you have been vocal. You've been vocal and you've spoken up, and I know that like you've gone through the right, like you've gone through these experiences, and you have not let them like stop you. Does that make sense? You've not let them stop you from growing, from changing, from being yourself. That's amazing. I think it's really amazing. So you're awesome.
So much.
Yeah. Let's see. I bet. Oh, so as we kind of wrap up our conversation, this has been super fun. I would love to hear. So we can do this either way. What is some advice you would give to your younger self if you want to kind of do like a little like self-reflection on what you would tell your younger self, and or what advice would you give to young Latinas today? It can be more kind of like generalized advice.
Hmm. So, um, I talk a lot to my to little me because
Mhm.
now that I have an 11 and a 5-year-old that I'm raising,
Aw, yeah.
I've also realized through therapy that I'm kind of re-raising little me and trying to provide
Mhm.
the emotional, spiritual, support that,
Yeah.
that she didn't have as a child. And so when I talk to little me, I just comfort her and I tell her that I'm there with her now, that she's not alone
Hmm.
anymore. And so that's,
Beautiful.
the message to just, and I think more than anything, just hang tight because things aren't always
Mm.
going to be this way. And
Yes.
I remember being little and I had these ruthless curls, and I could never get them to look good on me. That's how I
Mm.
thought. And I knew that when I grew up, I was going to have this beautiful hair and I would know what to do with it and that I was going to be beautiful. I knew it. I knew it. And so I just kept waiting. Like a lot of people they value their childhoods. Mine was not something that I would ever want to relive.
Mm.
Um, but the imagination, the creativity, and the power of little me
Mm.
has propelled me to accomplish the things that I have in my life. So I would say hold on tight. I would definitely tell younger Latinas to decenter men.
Mm.
So many
Mhm.
For so many years, we've been told that our worth is um, dependent on men, and it's not. I think if you decenter men, that you're more likely able to get to know yourself better as a young person, and
Yes.
to seek liberation and to seek an education and just all of these opportunities that sometimes, um, many times, men take away from women. And so,
Mm.
if you're going to be in a relationship, make sure that it's with someone who fully supports all of your dreams and
Yes.
ambitions, and that it not only says it,
Uh,
but it's going to do it. Like, um, when Gabe and I were first married, I told him, I have to get my PhD first, and we both agreed that things were going to be harder for me as a woman. So
mm.
he moved. We were married and we moved together to North Carolina, and that was really hard thing to expect from a partner.
Yeah.
But
That's a big
but
move. Yeah,
that's
totally.
that's necessary. That's the
That's
kind
what
of
you,
support.
that was your dream that you needed to
Right.
pursue. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And I wasn't going to give it up. Like, you should not be giving up dreams for men.
No, I'm going to even, do I dare say, I don't think you should give up your dreams for anyone.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think and that's why I think like self-reflection is so critical, because I feel like the moment we start giving up our dreams and plans, that builds resentment. Like, so something random being like a person, let's say a person who's like always wanted to live in New York, but they're like scared to leave their small town and they never go. That, when they're 80 years old, they'll be like, man, I wish I had, right? Things like that. It's like, you got to freaking do it. Like you have to freaking do it. Um, and not worry about truly what other people think or what they're going to say, how it's going to look. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's like your life is your life.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think, oh, this is something that I struggle with. When I hear people, and it's supposed to be cute or whatever, when I hear people when they tell young kids, "Oh, you have a boyfriend? Oh, you have a little girlfriend?" Why are you already training them and pushing them to seek validation? That's what it is. To seek validation by being in a little relationship even when they're like 6 years old.
They're
Stop.
playing,
It bothers
right?
me. I'm sorry. It really, I know that
No,
I
it,
don't have
it is.
children,
It
but it
is true.
bothers me. And that's the thing too, is like, yes, a healthy, obviously, right? A healthy, beautiful, supportive relationship is golden. But when it's not, when it's like, yeah, when it's controlling, abusive, gaslighting, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, it can really bring a person down, and it can stunt their growth, and it can do a whole lot of damage. It's really, mejor, truly, mejor sola, what is that saying? Mejor sola que mal acompañada. I'd rather be single than be in like a very toxic,
Toxic relationship.
troubled thing. No, no, no.
Yes, absolutely. I
So I
agree.
agree with you. I agree with you. Definitely, especially for young women. I'm like, stop obsessing with the boyfriend thing. Like, my God, like, like, it's funny. Um, but anyway, yes. Oh, I love everything that you shared, Alicia, Dr. Alicia
Oh,
Reyes Barriéntez, book
thank you,
bliss,
Dora.
whatever.
Thank you for having me. It's been
Yes.
great.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. We didn't even touch upon your poetry. So Dr. Alicia is also a poet, and
yes,
it's writing, and I love it. She has a lot of beautiful bilingual poetry.
yes. Maybe
Really
on another
beautiful.
occasion I can share some of that. Um,
Yeah, or even if you post it, I'll share it with the
okay,
podcast
for
and stuff.
sure,
That would be great.
for sure.
All right. Awesome. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here, Dr. Alicia Reyes Barriéntez. You're amazing. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. You can find the Gold Hoops and God podcast on Spotify, on iTunes, everywhere you listen to your podcast. We're available. And we also have the interview videos on YouTube. So you can follow me on YouTube or on Instagram at goldhoops_God. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Alicia.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.